apologies.
Narinda Kuna, oh sorry Chair, Narinda Kuna, Bill Gavin.
Any further? Yes.
Councillor Gurmeet Singh Sohal, because I believe he's overseas, and while we do have the benefit of Councillor Grinsell online, he is unfortunately not well enough to be here in person.
Chair, just in addition to that, Councillor Webb as well as central.
Oh.
Are we seeing to those apologies?
Right. Okay. Any declarations of interest? Item 2. No. Chair's remarks. First of all, Happy New Year, everyone. Hope it's a better one than the one just passed, but I have my doubts. Just something for people who've been around a very long time on the TDC and its predecessor, but also officers. I wanted to hand something to Pete Bond, which is the memorial diary for the late Councillor Graham Wilkes, who was on the PTA up until 2012, because there will be some, I've just got 3 left, and if you can find a good home for them, I'm thinking Sarah Jones.
Just been with Sarah, and I was more than happy
to
pass those on.
Right. Yeah. So, and I just want to get in quickly before Councillor Huxtable to say, you will note under the rail report that Malcolm Holmes is leaving, and I just think we ought to give him a round of applause for the great job he's done. Minutes. Item 4. I'll do accuracy first. I'll take it a couple of pages at a time. So page 1, 2 and 3, 4 and 5. Yes. Sorry, Claire.
Sorry, Chair. Under the apologies, my name is known as Karen Sim. I'm Claire Sim. So if we could get that changed, please. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you. 4 and 5. 6 and 7. 8. Okay. Now, are there any matters arising? That's next, isn't it? Again, I'll take it page by page, really. Page 1, 2, 3. You'll notice there's reference at the top of page 3 to the visit to Dudley Interchange. That's 10 till 12 now on the 30th of January. So that one's dealt with. Pages 4 and 5. 6 and 7. And 8. Okay, thanks very much. We're on to item 5. Action tracker. Is there anything to raise, officers or members?
Thank you, Chair. It is on the Dudley Interchange that we've already talked about on page 10. We seem on page 10 to now have 3 action points on the Dudley Interchange. Would it be sensible to amalgamate them all into one single action point? Thank you, Chair.
May I respond? Yes, it would, and I've actually spoken to Sandeep around those actions today as well, given that the site visit is now going to happen on the 30th of January, and then the updates will come to the February meeting, not January as suggested.
But Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Yeah, I'd just like to add to that. Our previous meeting this morning, when we spoke about various related issues to the CTV coverage, perhaps I may arrange something for the Dudley one on the same day if I can get something sorted out, which would probably be interesting for the members to see as well, as we spoke about earlier.
I guess there may be a time issue because we've got a set time for what we already plan.
Yeah.
So it would depend perhaps if it can be done, whether there's a time consequence.
That's fair comment, but I thought I'd offer the facility out. But I'll take it that what Councillor Huxtable has just referred to, we've now put right, have we? Mr.
Yes.
Yes, okay.
Okay. Anything else on the action tracker? Item 7, financial monitoring report. Councillor Actal, would you like to introduce that?
Cheers. Mr. Chairman, sir, thank you very much. So this is the financial monitoring report, reporting year-to-date income and expenditure up to 30th November 2022. Mr. Chairman, key points to note from the report are the year-to-date revenue position to 30th November 2022 reflects an adverse position of 0.6 million pounds. The key variances for this are as reported throughout the year, saving in the concession budget, partly offset by lower than budgeted use of reserves year to date to support the overall budget, as these have not yet been required. The full year position remain as previously reported, with the Q3 forecasts currently being undertaken for reporting in March. Overall, year-to-date capital expenditure to the end of November is 181 million pounds, which is 78.6 million pounds behind year-to-date budget. The key variance is in the investment program portfolio, which is 35.2 million pounds behind a year-to-date budget of 130.1 million pounds. The key drivers are: number one, Wensbury to Briley Hill extension is 7.5 million pound budget due to rephasing of activities in line with phased delivery agreed by West Midlands Combined Authority Board in July 2022. Number two, Birmingham East Side Metro extension, which is 6.2 million pounds year to date, adverse to budget due to revised phasing for utility works. Number three is Rail Camp Hill line local enhancements, which is 7.5 million pound year to date variance, and Walsall to Wolverhampton local enhancements, which is 3.2 million pound year to date variance due to rephasing of construction activity. Mr. Chairman, as a Commonwealth Games program includes all the schemes originally scheduled to be delivered in advance of the Games in July and August 2022. At 30th November, this program is 19.9 million pounds under budget. The main driver is sprint scheme, which are 8.5 million pounds behind year-to-date budget due to ongoing review of compensation events requests from contractors. University Station, which is 4.6 million pounds behind budget, also due to ongoing commercial negotiations. Paribas Station is 4.4 million pounds behind budget due to timing of contract closeout expenditure. As to other major works, is 7.9 million pound adverse year-to-date budget, driven largely by the Coventry Electric project, which is 2.4 million pounds, and Cross City Bus Dudley to Druids Heath, 1.9 million pounds. As to Crest full year forecast shows a 12.3 million pounds variance to budget. This follows a rebase exercise with project sponsors to reflect the most up-to-date information and around delivery of the schemes. As to grants to local authority programs, continues to remain largely in line with budget. Minor works are 2.8 million pound behind budget, with no significant project variance to report. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to hand over to Kate.
Nothing further to add from that briefing, but obviously happy to take any questions that members may have.
Thank you. It's sounding a bit like a step record here, but it's something I've been raising for years now, is the issue of if we didn't make sure the spend was on track, we'd end up coming into a period of high inflation, which would mean us not be able to do as much as we could with the money. And obviously that is now what we're seeing. So when you look in here, we can see under 3.1, it talks about 79 million off budget on capital not being spent this year so far. That's 30% of the spend that's not being done. It's still projected to be 70 million by the end of the year. Yet inflation currently, depending which projections you look at, Arcadis is projecting 5% construction cost inflation this year. Elsewhere, it's up to 18%. That means we could potentially be facing up to 14 million shortfall on this budget because we haven't spent it in time. And some of the projects, when you look at it, like Perry Bar Station, University Station, these are ones which issues and concerns have been raised about for years that they weren't. What I think is really important now is that the committee hears what exactly is being done to get all of this capital expenditure back on track. Because if we're not careful, we're going to end up not being able to do all of the schemes that this money was designed to do.
So I think that probably comes in with actually the paper that is later on the agenda around the capital pressures, where we have picked up a number of those pressures and also outlined some of the mitigations and they want to see.
Happy for you to come back later on that item.
Councillor Prince.
Thank you, Chair. Again, apologies if I break out into coughing. And I also had similar comments to make regarding item 10, which is the capital pressures that Councillor Alden's outlined. But in respect to this report, first of all, it would have been useful if it had been referred to as Metro. It's a little concerning this transport system is causing such additional maintenance costs when it really is relatively young, just 20 years old. Whilst this report sets out the current cost implication on what is a very small element of the network, these costs need looking at in terms of the whole system. And what does that look like going forward as the CRSTS package, I would have thought, is a long-term funding solution, or is it maybe better, or is it maybe better to question to find out? If so, what does this mean for the other parts of the CRSTS program? What are MML doing to ensure these issues are being designed out in future Metro phases? The performance standard should be much improved. Looking at the breakdown of costs on page 17, there are items here that should be lasting more than 20 years. So, is there a contractor's liability element here? Tunnel lining, for example. Lots of zero costs here should be removed, that they help focus on the costly issues. It is a presentational thing, but would give more clarity to the issues. The big question for me is CRSTS capital being used correctly for a number of the maintenance revenue activities. Thank you.
Yes, please.
So that there is obviously ongoing maintenance to the metro system. So we have within the revenue budget for MML, they have just the general repair on things like the lifts when they break down and so on as well. But similar to highway, so the CRSTS also includes highways capital renewals monies as well. And similar to that, we have introduced into the CRSTS programme the ability for us to do wholesale capital renewals on the Metro Line 1. And obviously, we'll take that into longer consideration as we extend the network as well. And it's to allow us to do those bigger pieces of maintenance works as and when they become required. There is a list, a priority list of those things that need to be done in order to keep the line safe and fit for use as well. So that is something which is being built into CRSTS, which was signed off by the Combined Authority Board last March when we agreed the CRSTS settlement. I don't know whether that answers the question, Councillor Grinsell.
Somewhat is what I would say, Kate. But I think maybe when you reviewed my question more fully, you may want to respond to me in writing, please.
Okay, we could do that. Thank you.
Are you indicating, Councillor?
No, sorry, Chair. All I'm going to ask again is please send that reply to all the councillors.
Anything further on this report? As you see, the recommendations are to note. Are you agreed?
Yeah.
Thank you. Item 8. Councillor Huxtable, would you like to introduce this?
I will indeed. Thank you very much, Chair. I also have a bit of a croaky voice, but hopefully I can keep going. This is the rail business report. You did steal my thunder earlier. I don't think Tom was in the meeting when you mentioned Malcolm moving on. He will be a great loss to TFWM and WMRE. Big shoes to fill, but we do wish him the very best in his new role. I can see a field trip to Great Central Railway at some point coming. I'm not going to go through. Members will be glad to know the report in detail, just pick out the highlights. One particular highlight for me is the Midlands Rail Hub. This has the potential to be a huge game changer for us in the West Midlands. We're all very good at talking about north-south links in terms of the rail network, whether up to Manchester, whether up to Leeds, or whether southward bound down to London. We're very poor at talking about east-west links. The Midlands Rail Hub, Midlands Connect, does have a very ambitious, aspirational plan to address those east-west links, Birmingham being critical for it, and in particular the Bordsley Cords, which did make it into the integrated rail plan from the government of last year, and how they would be absolutely key to delivering what we plan to do as outlined in the report. And also from a very local perspective, if you are picking out linking the Camp Hill and Waterton lines and 6.5 and linking this in with the new station study, obviously Castle Bromwich is along that Waterton line. And I know that's a very key for elected members in the Erdington area, as well as in the North Solihull area. We've always talked about capacity at our railway stations. They're absolutely essential in terms of capacity at Moore Street and Snow Hill, and to actually reduce the congestion, the rail congestion there at Birmingham New Street. And obviously that would be key impact for the Camp Hill line stations that will hopefully be coming on track later on this year or early next year. The report goes into some detail about the Midlands Rail Hub. As I say, I'm not going to do it in great detail. I've already referenced the new station study in point 8, where there's 4 potential new stations that have been identified for further work to see whether they're feasible to deliver. 2 in Coventry, 2 in Birmingham, albeit 1 right on the Solihull boundary. Mention has already been made in this meeting about the university station. As the report says, there was a site visit which I attended in both my capacities as part of the City Council's ONS committee, but also Rail Metro. It was also very useful to have the 2 local ward members there present who gave their perspectives on it. And I've always said that we need to keep local ward members fully in touch with all our transport aspirations, because they are the ones that have the democratic mandate for that particular location. And I believe there might be a question about that later. Obviously, exciting work. The new stations in terms of package 1, Darlaston and Willenhall, package 2, along the Camp Hill line at Moseley Village, Kingsheath and Pineapple Road. And again, there's a lot of local consultation. There's some consultation later on this month, early next month, with the local community, and you will see a photo of a site visit by Moseley in blue, which by the looks of it includes a local councillor, at least 1 local councillor in the visit, so that's always good to see. And then Aldridge Station, the business case is being developed. We haven't been very good at opening new stations. To get 5 or 6 new stations in a very short space of time would be a remarkable achievement and very beneficial to the West Midlands. Another potential game changer is the West Midlands Grand Rail collaboration. I hope all members present voted that the Grand Rail Collaboration HQ should be in Birmingham, because it will benefit the whole region. And we look forward to hearing developments on that. But again, there's a collaboration hub being opened at New Street Station. Community rail update. This will form the site visit of the MEG this month. We're going out on the Shakespeare line with West Midlands Trains to look at community rail partnerships. Hope there will be a good attendance by members. We're very fortunate that it's not going to be on one of the strike days. We know that for definite now, so it will be going ahead. And we're going to be joined by, as I understand it, the chairman of the Friend of the Shakespeare line. So I'm really looking forward to that. And again, how we can actually improve community rail partnerships, which have been previously referred to as the Cinderella service, I believe, of West Midlands Trains, but they can transform, improve our local railway stations at the heart of our communities. So those are the main points that I wanted to emphasise in the report, but as always, be pleased to take any questions. Thank you, Chair.
Tom, is there anything like that?
I think it probably would be remiss not to mention and reflect on some of the challenges that are occurring in the UK rail network and certainly the local network. Councillor Huxtable has had the good fortune of being able to mention all the positive things, and there certainly are positive things still happening on our rail network, and we mustn't lose sight of that. But of course, there are a number of material challenges, and the recent industrial action is probably the most obvious of those. As Councillor Huxtable's mentioned, the latest wave of industrial action concluded over the weekend, with Saturday being the final day of that. There are currently no more dates in the diary. 14 days notice has to be provided. But I think the significant disruption over the whole of the course of December will have been felt by customers as a consequence of that period of strike action, and also action short of a strike. which was people not volunteering for rest day work and overtime, which in some cases actually caused as much, if not more, disruption on services and customers than the actual officially called strike action. Now, trying to remain optimistic, there has been some small progress made in those talks. As some of you may be aware, over the weekend, an offer was made by train operators to ASLEF, which is the union who represent train drivers. That's currently under consideration by ASLEF, and hopefully that will be the basis of an agreement between the operators and that particular union. Shortly before Christmas, Network Rail was able to reach terms with the TSSA, and an offer was accepted by TSSA members there. Of course, there is a third union, the RMT, and before Christmas, an offer had been made by both Network Rail and the train operators to RMT, but unfortunately that offer had been rejected. But there is a meeting, I understand, happening today between ministers, the unions, and also representatives of the rail industry. And hopefully this is a sign that some positive traction is being made in these talks. Because putting aside sort of the people's political opinions on this, the disruption to customers is undeniable, and it's in the interests of absolutely everybody that a sensible agreement can be found that enables services to resume and to continue running reliably, so that people in the region and nationally can continue to travel about, to connect with one another, to connect to employment opportunities, and for businesses to connect their businesses to new markets. So I'm sorry I've had to be the bearer of bad news. I do try and remain optimistic at all times, and I do see some reasons to be optimistic. But certainly if you were a customer travelling over the course of the last 4 weeks, you might struggle to see things in the way that I am saying them to you now.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Tim, for your report. Very optimistic report, and that shows how much the taxpayers is investing into our trains. And so thank you very much, Tom. You really make me proud, and I'm sure all our colleagues feel proud that we have honest officers who give us information. And I think that is the role of politician, to be straightforward with people out there and the people at the highest authority, because I honestly feel, I don't want to be make a political comments, but it seems that people in power and position, they are just spectators while our train industry or services are decimated. It seems the trucks are making money, the leasing companies are making money, the shareholders are making money, the workers are suffering, the customers are suffering, and as far as taxpayers concerned, they are being ripped off. And so thank you for highlighting this. This is a massive challenge. These are our trains. Normally, you know better than I do that during Christmas periods, the tracks are repaired. Now, tracks are not repaired. Even before the strikes, we were in train industry was struggling and services were struggling. Now, once again, even if we settle the strikes, once again, we will have disruption because the tracks will not repaired during these holidays. And also look at Aventis, what they're doing to us. As far as their services are concerned, atrocious, and it seems nobody is holding them to account. Take say for instance Nuneaton, Coventry, Kenilworth, and Leamington. So we have persevered, we have put so much pressure and money and lobby, and we got that line. We got the station at Coventry Building Society. Now we got no trains, then we got the trains, then there were no drivers, now it's a strike, back to coaches. That's not the way to run services. So I will urge my colleagues here that please, we need to appeal to only one person we have, who has a good relationship with the government, and that is our mayor, who has we can appeal. And he has to do more, and he needs to be effective and bring this strike, ask the government to seriously negotiate with trade unions. We all watch TV. We all read papers. We know where the problems are. Again and again is, they call one another liars. And yet they're not sitting on the table. And then we get, it's very clear the government sabotage far as negotiations are concerned. So please, thank you for being honest. Honestly, sometimes it pains me that we have officers dedicated and committed, and yet we don't have a political leadership in our country which sees wisdom that we need to work together. We need to collaborate and work in partnership. Thank you. Therefore, my appeal to Tim and all of us is ask the mayor, send another letter. I know I have asked him in the West Midlands Real Executive Board. I said you need to be more effective, and I would say to him that he needs to send more letters because people are suffering and we are all elected. This is an honor and privilege to be here and to be elected, and we are not providing services to our community. And far as Tim is concerned, what's the point of all this investment when there are no trains? Where are the trains then? Why aren't these people who are in power and position? The mayor was elected, he has our support. He should be standing again and again on a platform and saying that, look, we want this dispute to be sorted. So please, I would urge my colleagues to back me up so we can write from TDC to Mayor that he needs to influence and use his influence. And if nothing else, he should go on a hunger strike and that will solve it in 3 days.
Thank you. I wanted to come in and pick up some comments there. I've got 4 things to send the report, but just firstly on that, I would just remind members that in a dispute between an employer and the employees, politicians' hands are tied by the law. And anyone who doubts that could perhaps ask former council leader John Clancy in Birmingham, who ended up no longer being the council leader after involving himself in an industrial dispute, as to what the boundaries are between politicians and the staff. Picking up on the report itself, under 4.7. Well, I let you finish yours, so perhaps you'll just let me finish all my points on the report first. Thank you. Under 4.7, Avanti West Coast, I wanted to pick up and in some ways echo the comments I mean, certain contractor about Avanti. It's clear ever since they took over the contract, there's been a remarkable reduction in the quality of the service provided to residents in this city. There's only been exacerbated in the last year. As the report itself picks up, it isn't just related to the most recent industrial dispute. It's actually going on much longer with that with Avanti. And the issue where residents can't book tickets a decent distance in advance actually makes it very difficult for them to be able to use the service, because what happens is a lot of residents will end up finding another way and never end up booking that ticket. They won't book it 2 weeks before, they'll just end up not booking it. So that I think is going to have a significant impact on the service long term if it isn't fixed soon. Moving on to 8.4, and Councillor will talk about the new stations that are going to be investigated further. Very much welcome the proposal to look further into the Castle Bromwich station. As was touched on, that would end up serving both the Castle Leadington community, but also the North Solihull Castle Bromwich community. So that is a real must, I think, for that part of the city. So it's good to see it's made its way onto the shortlist for the further work, and very much support that. Under 10.6, the visit to university train station was picked up. Well, under 10.3 to 10.6. There's 2 questions here. One, can we get an update on what the latest timescales are when we think this work will actually finally finish? Because it's getting on to being a year behind schedule now, from the original first date that was given to members. And also, what work has been done around the lessons learned about why it was ending up being so delayed. We obviously see the impact both in this report and other reports, but this is having a financial impact from the delay. And so we need to make sure we're doing the proper lessons learned, study that, so that when we're building these other stations that are being looked at, we don't have the same situation with them. And then finally, on a similar vein, what work is being done to review if there's going to be any long-lasting damage to the rail network in the area from all the industrial actions and the lack of confidence that's putting into the system from residents by the organisation, to make sure that we can come out of, when there is a resolution to the current industrial action, with a stronger rail network, not a weaker one. Thank you.
Would you like to respond or get the appropriate colleague to respond to those particular 4 points, I think it was?
The university station, I'll start with that one first. So we're in the process of rebaselining that, so we will bring an update to you in terms of that time. There is an ongoing lessons learned around the delays, and a lot of it has been related to the works that we've done to facilitate the Commonwealth Games. So a 2-stage entry into service, which complicated the programme really, and then it's the usual, the unusual inflationary supply chain issues that we've seen because of the global events that have been occurring as well. That has caused some of those delays, but there will be an update, so we'll bring that to you as well. I think on the long-lasting impacts of the railway network, wanting to come out with a stronger railway network, I totally agree with you. We need to do that. We need to continue to grow patronage. I think that's not just around rail industrial action. I think that is how rail contracts are now being managed with DfT and so on. And again, through the West Midlands Rail Executive, we're looking to make sure that we've got the influence to make sure that we can allow and enable our operators to make sure that we're growing patronage in this region. I think some of our new stations, it's a way of marketing. How many stations is it now? 5 that will be opening this year, next year. So a way of marketing and growing the patronage in the region as well. But we do need some stability in the rail network to enable us to do that. So I think it's bigger than just the industrial action as part of that as well. But they're the 2 points I wanted to come back on. What were the?
I think the other ones were welcoming things, and then just about Avanti, I think it's just a noting, isn't it? None of you guys are responsible for Avanti West Case.
The Rail Executive has been writing to Avanti around that, as Councillor Poves knows as well.
Thank you.
Only to say I was actually on a call with Avanti just before this meeting, so they are certainly very high on our focus list at the moment, because the service that's been delivered to customers for a while now has not been at the standard that those customers ought to expect, particularly in relation to the ticket purchasing window. Avanti are actually speaking to colleagues at West Midlands Trains, who some of you may recall went through a similarly challenging period with train crew availability about 18 months ago, have largely come out of the other side. Certainly not going to say that every single service runs on time every single day, but they are certainly a far cry from the operator that we knew 2 years ago, and they've been recognised actually as having some best practice in this area. So it's really good to see that the rail industry is showing a welcome degree of maturity by operators who previously may have always competed with one another and wouldn't talk to one another. They are now sitting down, sharing best practice and looking to see if there's anything that can be applied to ensure that the network functions as customers require it to, not just individual parts of that network.
Thank you very much. Well, just specifically to Councillor Lecter, thank him for his comments. He talks about the need for Andy, the elected mayor, to be standing on a platform. Page 28 of the report, he is literally standing on a platform with a new 196 unit, and that it's a brand new unit. Which is fantastic to see that level of investment in the rolling stock in the West Midlands. There he is, literally at Wolverhampton Station, and it's not just the 196. We've also got the 730s that have been introduced, which for train nerds like me are electric trains, which will be operating on the Cross City line, and we gradually replace the 323s services. And of course, historically, we've also had the rollout of the Class 172 services along the Snow Hill line. And this is exactly what we need. We need an elected mayor like Andy to press the case for rail investment in the West Midlands. And I know I've seen Andy do that. So I saw him literally do that at a coffee shop in Moseley with the then Secretary of State. And I think that some of the officers lined up in front of me were actually there on that very day when he took the then Secretary of State for Transport to that coffee shop in Moseley to talk about the money for the Camp Hill line and why we need it. And I don't think it is any coincidence that in the report we talk about the long-stated ambitions for the Camp Hill line stations and others. And it's happened because we've got a mayor that presses government for that investment in the rail industry, not just rolling stock, but also infrastructure. And in terms of university, I think the point's been well made that we need to learn lessons from it. I think there's been a sort of perfect storm of issues to do with the university station, from contractors on site, from things from the canal network, things that we didn't know about at the time and have come to light since the work actually started. But I think Councillor Warden makes a very fair point.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chair.
Councillors Hyatt and then Webb.
Can I say that I never want to not be very efficient in his use of time? I understand that that was the moment when our estimable mayor also chose to visit my marginal ward as well to campaign on behalf of the Conservative Party. Can I say that it is the Conservative government which has failed to invest in our rail network, has failed to electrify our rail network, so that we're having to sell electric train motors and buy binary motors instead, which are far more money, because we need binary motors that are diesel and electric, because we haven't got an electrified railway line, because our government has chosen not to invest properly. Now, our mayor could be asking our government to intervene with the rail strike. They could be prioritising passengers and striking rail drivers, and that's the request that I certainly support my estimable colleague in asking our Lord Mayor to do, our Metro Mayor rather to do. Thank you.
Councillor Webb.
Thank you, Chair. I concur with what my colleagues just said. He's not doing enough. He's okay when he wants photo opportunities. But as someone else has said, in the OBE in January, he's getting his praise of other buggers' efforts. And that's not good enough. Get off his backside, stop being in front of the camera, get some business done.
Vice Chair.
Well, I can, whilst I concur with my colleagues, the mayor, I do like him sitting down eating a tin of pineapple when we know the day before what the station was going to be called. I'd like to just say that we've got a heavy agenda and I'd just like to move business on, please.
I support that, Mr. Chairman, because
Here, no more party politics.
very unfair to slack someone up, not here to defend themselves. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Can I comment, please?
You may, certainly.
Sorry, I think this platform shouldn't be used to exploit politicians. I think this is unfair, to be quite honest with you. We are here to do business. So I think we should say.
Unless there's any further comment, then I will move on to the next item. The report is for noting.
Chair, I thought my colleagues are backing that we should be writing to Metro Mayor, asking him to be more active to settle this dispute. And I just quickly want to reply to Robin about the political intervention. The government is actively involved sabotaging this, the negotiation between the companies and between the unions. And it's well a fact. But sir, can I have a seconder?
The item's moved on. You didn't get a seconder and the item's been moved on.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Well, it's up to you, but it is our people who are suffering. You don't care about that? That our industry is decimated?
From any group seconded you.
Chair, can you take control, please?
Well, I'm good, but I'm not that good.
Well, let's cut out all these party political things that we're getting here at the moment. It isn't getting any of us anywhere at all.
Chair, Councillor Locke proposed we move on. I second that. Let's move on.
Agreed.
Thank you.
There was no decision taken and there was no actual wording from a motion if you'd wanted to move on.
There you go. So it's too late. We've moved on. Right. Next item.
Well, in case of the total silence, I'll move on to the next item.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Yes, okay.
And I won't even mention anything about ramps at Perry Bar. Item 9, SWIFT programme. Yes.
Thanks, Chair. So essentially, this is an update of the works that we're doing with some data as well to show you broader progress. SWIFT is now a decade old, so we've been at this for about 10 years, which is brilliant. We're the largest, most comprehensive smart card scheme in the UK outside of London by some way. 250,000 regular users, about 50 million journeys and growing. So we're in a good space as a starting point. But just to cover off some of the key projects, so I've got projects that we've delivered and projects that we're still working on. So starting with the projects that we've delivered. You will know from updates that I've given to this group in the past that we delivered Swift Go, which is our oyster, effectively. That's our capping. So you can travel around on the bus and tram. You just tap in when you get on and you get the best value fare at the end of the day over 3 days or over 1 week. So that's in place already. Lots of work has been going on in 2022 to improve that. That included rolling out access for top-ups at over 1,000 pay zone outlets and access to top-ups at our vending machines. A really big step for us. Lots of people are still reliant on cash, and what that does, it really opens up that Swift Go product themselves reliant on cash. So you don't need a bank card or a bank account to access that. It's going really well. So we got past 10,000 1-week caps a few months ago. Very little marketing. I'll come on to, we've got substantial marketing now for our BSIP to really push that. So I'll come on to that. Next steps on Swift Go is to roll out the children's version, which the team is currently testing at the moment. We've got a gap on rail, which is well known. Again, sort of come into that later. But what we've managed to do with Swift Go is we've eclipsed Oyster Card in the sense that we have a 3-day cap. In London, you have a 1 day or a 1 week. And as people are now more flexibly working, that 3-day cap means that you can get the best value for the way you travel when you're commuting. One of the other big projects we delivered in 2022 was the rollout of the TFWM app. Beta in 2021, it come into its live environment in 2022. That's again another big step forward to us. We had about 4 apps. Operators have got their own apps. If you wanted to have an app that gave you everything you needed in transport, you probably needed about 6 different ones. The TFWM app now does all this in one. So ticket finding, ticket purchase, ticket validation, journey planning, real time. We even included cycle hire integration and full account management through one app. Towards the end of 2022, we updated again to bring in some of the features that were in the previous app from customer feedback that we'd had, and that enabled us to close that app down and save some of our operational costs on that basis. Didn't all go perfectly swimmingly, so the old app, the NWM app, was so old that there was no features or functions in there that allowed us to directly contact the users. So in the new app and other apps, you can put an in-app message to let people know what's going on. We couldn't tell directly those customers that this was closing down. We had a big campaign to try and let people know, social media, advertisements at bus stops on our real-time information. So we really went to town to try and let people know that the app was closing down. Didn't capture everyone, and a number of people were disappointed with the fact that they didn't know. A bit of a challenge for us, but we did do a lessons learned on it. There was also some teething problems at the start around real-time information. Has not been, I think, but people know it's not been where it needs to be. That's sort of amplified by the fact that bus services are in a difficult state at the moment. I think 1 in 8 drivers, 8% of drivers are less than that. Yeah, so but we've had a problem that bus services aren't running as reliably as they could, and that's had a real impact on the real-time information. That the guys are working hard to resolve that. So we've made some big improvements. We've had a few issues that we've been dealing with. Still a success though. So over 90,000 downloads of that app to date. So that is a success. It's something that will continuously improve. We'll continue to take feedback and continuously improve. Another project, the Metro team updated their ticketing structure, ultimately bringing in zones that was targeted at, well, lots of customers, but particularly season ticket holders. They used to have a single season ticket that was the same price if you were travelling from Birmingham to Wolverhampton or Birmingham to the Jewellery Quarter. So they're missing quite a big market. So they've now introduced a zonal solution, and we've updated all of the Swift touch points, including externals on that one. So again, that's had a big impact. Some huge in-flight projects. So again, lots of work we've already done to make bank card acceptance on all modes other than train. So if you get on any bus in the West Midlands, you can pay with your bank card. If you get on the tram, you can pay with your bank card. But there's a national limitation to that. So there is the way that contactless payment works. It's really protective about data exchange. National Express use in-it ticket machines. Most others use ticket machines, and they're not allowed to share data. So what that means, if you get on, say, the 16, come into Birmingham on Diamond bus, go out with an NX bus, there's no data exchange that allows best value capping, and you can have the customer being overcharged. There's a real problem. We've been working on resolving that for about 3 years with our partners, Midlands Connect, and more recently, Project Coral, which is operators. We've got a design that's now just been finalised. We've got the money through Crusts. So we will be, in the next few months, going out to procure a solution for that. It's a really good piece of work from our perspective. I think because of where we've got to with Swift, sort of UK looks at us to resolve some of these huge problems. So this will be solved in the West Midlands first, and this solution will then be used to solve it all around the UK, other than London, who have solved it in a more expensive way. So it's a project that's in flight, but it's moving in the right direction. Big project as well on Metro. So at the moment you pay on the tram, and if anyone's tried to get the tram from Grand Central down to here, you could want to pay, but the conductor can't get to you in time for you to pay. So we lose a little bit of revenue, and the experience isn't great. This will be about tapping in and tapping out, so everyone can pay. We'll capture far more revenue, and it's a much better experience for customers. You'll be able to use your Swift card, you'll be able to use your bank card, and you'll be able to use a barcode. So even those that are reliant on cash, they won't be excluded from this project. And lots of effort's gone in to make sure that that's the case. Swift on rail, as I said, so we've got about 30,000 regular users of Swift, but we've only got 6 stations that have the hardware that we need to roll out Swift more widely. We're in the process of changing that with our partners. West Midlands Trains have a huge project to roll out validators. Some of you may have seen some of them on stations. They're not live yet, but they're installed and they're wrapped up, ready to roll out. The 2 things we're doing, we're going to be able to sell Swift tickets at the rail station, which is a big change for us. So you can upload your ticket on your Swift card rather than having it in stock. And when the validators are rolled out, you'll be able to tap in, tap out, and get the best value fare that will link in with the other modes as well. So that is a challenge. So to do that, we're getting the rail delivery group to do some bespoke work just for us that will integrate our Swift system with their wider system. And again, that's another one where we're leading the way with DFT, RDG, GBR, that will roll someone out in the West Midlands. 95% of what we do will then go on throughout the rest of the UK. That will mean at that point, we will have a system that's better than Oyster, having spent a fraction of what they've spent on it. So still quite a lot of work to do, but that everyone's on side, everyone's supporting us in doing this, which is great. So the last sort of stuff before I come on to the stats, we're really excited by the BSIP funding that we have and how that's going to impact on the ticketing. So 88 million in total, 57.5 million is going into ticketing investment. 18.5 million is to freeze the fares until 2025. We have some of the lowest fares in the UK already. They've been frozen, I think, on bus in particular for about 5 years. So they've not gone up in that time. They're going to stay frozen until 2025, which we're really pleased with that. £35 million of passenger incentives, a programme of passenger incentives split between targeting potential users, so either people that could use the network or people that have lapsed from the network, and people that are restricted in access to the network. So a whole host of cohorts that we're targeting there, including carers, care leavers, NEETs, refugees, volunteers, etc. I've got a huge list. And what we've said to government is £35 million, amazing amount of money. If we can't capture enough people through the people we've already targeted, we'll just move on and look for other sort of people that we can help and support. So we're really looking forward to doing that. Another great one where I think the UK in terms of ticketing is looking at us. So through our enhanced partnership, we're doing a bumfire bus ticket. So at the moment, there are about 3,000 choices of tickets. So if any of you said to me, what's the best ticket for me, Matt? I've been working in this space for 20 years. I'd have to ask you about 10 questions and then I could possibly tell you, if you know what I mean. We've got far too many tickets. So the bumfire bus tickets takes us from about 3,000 to about 12. For the first time, we'll be able to advertise the price at the bus stops. The price isn't bad, like I say, some of the lowest in the UK. It's frozen for years. We'll be able to advertise that at the bus stop, so people just walking past will know actually this is good value. So we're really, really excited by that one. The other one, we've got £4 million for admin, technical development and promotion. At least £3.5 million of that will go into promotion. We have a massive campaign to support all of those other initiatives. So hopefully that will make a huge change. We're just finishing off with some of the stats. So as I said, Swift is continuing to grow. Before the pandemic, 1 in 4 public transport journeys were on Swift in the West Midlands. That's now 1 in 3. People are moving away from cash and coming on board with Swift, which is great. Swift is at 91% of pre-pandemic levels, where the bus network is a fair bit lower. So Swift is, it's performing better. Really pleased with the customer satisfaction as a final point here. So we've always had good customer satisfaction, but in 2022 we got to 90% of people satisfied or very satisfied. That was up from our previous record of 88%. So we've got we're in a really good space where people really like Swift. We've got some funding to develop it further, and we've got some funding to promote it more widely. So I think we're in a really good spot with it. So I'll leave it there, if that's okay, Chair, and open up for any questions.
Thank you. Yes.
Thank you. The price capping, can you explain to me just quickly how that works from a customer perspective? As I got a Swift card and I saw that it did the capping and I thought, well, that's great. I've used an Oyster card before. I understand that in an Oyster card, you just tap it as you go. It charges you for single tickets up until you get up to the price of a day ticket, and it doesn't charge you anymore. So I got on the bus with my Swift card and I tapped it, and the bus driver said, well, what kind of ticket do you want? And it just threw me, and I was instantly like, well, I don't know, if I ask for a single ticket, am I just going to get charged a single ticket next time, or do I need to tell them straight away that I need to? And it sort of stopped the capping benefit for me, and I'd just like to know from a customer perspective, if they want to use the capping, how do they do that?
Yeah, thank you. So effectively it works in the way you've described. So you've had a driver training error there, I think. So ultimately there is no question. You put your Swift card on the reader, that you're done, then you go and sit down and everything's calculated in the back office. So it is like Oyster, other than, like I say, we have the 3-day cap. I don't know how long ago that experience was, but if you do have any details, it would be good to get them so that we can push it back to the operator and let them know. There's like I say, it's a driver training issue.
It was about 10 months ago before I got given one for being.
Okay. The other thing, some of this is natural, if you know what I mean. So 10 months ago, the scheme was quite new, and there would be far less people using it. So that's when you get more of the driver error types. I would hope if you tried to use it again today, you wouldn't get that. But genuinely, if you get anything like that again, please do report it through.
Any further questions or comments? Yes.
Thank you so much for what you shared. It's been really interesting. In the media, we've seen how Oyster cards can be used for photographic evidence if we have to have photo ID in order to vote at the elections. Will people be able to use the Swift cards, do you know? Because that's the full photo ID.
Well, I mean, ultimately, the card can be used for a whole host of things, and we've done stuff in the past where we've introduced in Wolverhampton your Swift card as your gym membership. But actually, something that we've been working on more recently is trying to get rid of the photo requirement altogether, because it's a barrier. So, you know, if you're a child and you want a 1 week ticket and you walk into one of our 1,000 news agents, the first question you're going to get is, do you have a photo ID? You're going to have to leave and go and get one, by which point you probably try and get your parents to drop into school. So we're really pushing to remove the photo requirement from it. But again, the capability is there. If that was something that other people were minded to really push, the capability is there to do exactly that. But I think in the transport space, the photo is becoming more of a problem than a help.
That was a bit of a technical question. So, for example, Claire's sort of tapped her Oyster card into the technical behind the scenes. So how does that actually work then?
So,
For example, Claire's been out 4 times this week, used 3 times, let's just say 3 times this week on her Oyster card. How does that actually work? So how do you calculate the best option for Claire to use hers? So, you know, like it says,
yeah.
The back office. How do the back office work it out? And what do they do with our bank details, or depending on what card we've used, or have she's used her card? How does the technical side work behind the scenes?
Yeah. Okay. So essentially, what the back office, we're in the cloud. It's got all of the ticketing rules. Far too many rules because far too many tickets, but it has them all perfectly. So what happens when you touch the ticket machine is it notes what bus service you're on, what the operator is, what the time of day is, where you are on that journey, and all of that information feeds into the back office, and the computer then calculates a value for that journey. And then it will match it against other journeys you do. So if you travel on the tram, we've got a bus and tram ticket. There are hundreds of thousands of combinations to get you the right fare. But luckily, like I say, that's now happening in a server somewhere rather than instantly on the ticket machine. But that's quite a simple way of telling you about the technology. But ultimately, that's what it's doing. There's a token taken at the time. It's recording the information it needs to go into the back office to then set the value for your fare. And then that builds that up over the course of the week to set you the right value at the end of the week. And like I say, we've had 10,000 cats, got loads of people using this. It's working really, really well.
Is there any further comments or questions? I've got just one. I should know this, but does Swift come under the remit of a particular member engagement group? Or is there a gap here? Because what I'm thinking is if there's a gap, it just needs a young, switched on technological person to take an interest.
Yeah, it doesn't at the moment, but more than happy to report into a group. No problem with that. It'd be good to get some more support around it. So,
Any volunteers?
Possibly.
For the remainder of this municipal year. So, yeah, the contact. That's really helpful. It's odd with such a potentially huge thing that seems to be a gap in terms of the elected member contact.
Yeah, it'd be good to bridge that.
Okay, so we've got the 2 recommendations to note the progress and then welcoming the increase. I think that sounds really good. So thank you, colleagues, for all that you do. So we shall move on, if that's okay, everyone. And thank you very much, Matt. So, Pete, you're on next for items 10 and 11.
Thank you, Chair. I'll keep a relatively brief update to the committee. The transport update is realistically a funding update for agenda item 10. One of the points that was picked out there by Matt was around bus service improvement plan funding from government, and that's a capital/revenue fund, and highlighted some of the mechanisms and ways in which we are utilising that fund. And just to advise the committee that the first tranche of funding, that is the payment for year one, the existing financial year that we're in, is due into the Combined Authority Transport for West Midlands on the 20th of January. So just over a week away, which will allow us to start to mobilise and implement some of those long-term activities that form part of our bus service improvement plan and linked to the national bus strategy. Turning to the more revenue related matters that we have been updating the committee on previously, predominant elements that I wanted to speak about today linked to bus and bus funding. So I won't say too much on this because there is a more detailed bus report coming up on the agenda, but just in terms of wider funding, the current tranche of government support for bus service funding is due to expire at the end of March, so at the end of the financial year. There is currently no additional funding in place from April the 1st, but again, as we have updated the committee at previous occasions when we get to this sort of time, there are indications from government that there is a desire and a willingness to provide some form of additional support and funding for our bus services in the region. The follow-on report comes to the details of how we have managed, and this committee indeed has taken decisions on how we have managed the current tranche of funding in terms of the lead up to the expiry of what's called the bus recovery grant. The government are currently considering options about A, the value, and B, how they might passport future funds. In terms of timing of those decisions, we're advised that there may be some further information come from government around from ministers from late January, but we're increasingly being advised this might move into February. This itself could pose risks to the delivery of bus services, and that is that there is a registration period, as you are aware, for bus operators to be able to deregister services. And at the moment, there are dialogues going on between bus operators and government as to what the implications of that might be. So, for example, 20th of January is the date when operators would need to deregister services in order for that to happen at the end of March. So government is currently talking to Transport for West Midlands and other authorities up and down the country about whether we are willing to accept sort of suggested deregistrations, so accept deregistrations from operators, but allow them to rescind them if the funding from government matches the aspiration. We obviously have concerns around that, and we've expressed those concerns to government as well. But just to keep members informed around what we are discussing with them, and also the mechanism by which that funding might be paid. So I think on that, on the funding itself, that's all I wanted to advise. The critical points as well, the funding that's currently coming, that is between January and March, continues to be devolved to Transport for West Midlands. So that's in line with how we received that funding last year around Commonwealth Games. What we are doing currently is working through the terms and conditions of that fund with operators. So one of the things, just to advise the committee, that we have sought to do is utilise the terms and conditions so that we reward operators based on the performance of actual services provided rather than just the performance of scheduled mileage. That's to try and incentivise the improvement in what we saw as the levels of performance in the bus network prior to Christmas, and hope that some of the implications of service changes in January have started to have a positive impact on that and manage them through as well. And just in terms of wrapping agenda item 11 into that, both for brevity and being succinct, just proposal to this committee is that from February, there will now be an actual report which ties in transport operations from our RTCC team, who will come and present that report to the committee as well. So we'll start to see a written report to each of the transport delivery committees as well. The first one of those has been drafted, wasn't ready for this committee, but we are working through the finer detail of that. That will be ready for the CDC agenda setting meeting. To leave it there and take any questions and comments from members.
Okay. So you note what you say. Yeah. Thank you very much. Yes. Scary. I hesitate to suggest that the mayor could help encourage the government. Anyway, let's move on to something nice and easy. Update on West Midlands bus. Just want to say before John comes in, and of course Mary, there's a lot of stuff in here, and we all have a patch that we represent. What I do want to avoid is a prolonged discussion of patch items, which might be of interest to one or two people, but really leave the rest of us totally cold. So my suggestion on that is, don't want to curtail your sort of input, but on the other hand, if you've got specific detailed stuff where you think that it needs raising, I would have thought that you'll love this. You could talk because he doesn't know how to spend his time. He doesn't have enough to do already. Yes, Councillor Brinson.
Thank you, Chairman. I take on board what you've just said. However, each of us, and I was going to mention two particular issues over stagecoach, or the lack of stagecoach in Solihull. But not ward specific, but ward specific. And this is an experience I had recently. On the 6th of December, I emailed a senior officer of transport for West Midlands over an issue that has now been going on for the best part of 2 years. That officer responded to me and said, rather than email me, councillor, I suggest you go to the member's email address, which he very kindly forwarded to members' email address. Guess what? Nothing. No response at all since the 6th of December.
I'll ask officers to respond to that in due course, but I would really first like to ask the relevant chair to introduce the topic and then bring in John.
Councillor Mary, Councillor Mary Lact, chair of putting passengers first, and Johnny next.
Thank you, Councillor. Yeah, so thank you all. It's just a brief report just to provide an update on the back of the network review that was undertaken during the autumn and before Christmas. I wasn't intending to rehearse the reasons for the network review. I think they're very well known and have been engaged with councillors, not just of TDC, but right across the West Midlands and with MPs as well. So it's more reports to provide the outputs from that process. You will remember the network review actually identified around 39 bus service contracts that were potentially at risk following that review, and the report breaks down 3 or 4 different sections for those outputs. So firstly, we've got a number of services that were retained without changes, detailed in Appendix A. And there were 8 of those, a number that were then retained with changes for a number of reasons, either because of their commercial viability or to ensure that they were affordable moving forward, or service enhancements due to some of the basic improvements that I'll come on to very shortly in more detail. But perhaps most significantly,
the 12 services that unfortunately we've not been able to support and have subsequently been withdrawn from the 1st of January. Where that has been the case, we have communicated that to passengers and local stakeholders and provided details of alternative services or their next nearest service that have been available to them. Additionally, if you recall, the National Express were proposing to withdraw a number of school services as well as part of that network review, and they'd identified around 20 dedicated school services. I'm really pleased to say that following the TDC members briefing session that was held in November, National Express committed to go back and relook at that decision. The majority of those services have been retained. Those that haven't been retained directly have been reviewed and alternative services considered and communicated back directly to schools and passengers. We have collectively challenged National Express on how they've communicated that, but we haven't yet heard any complaints about lack of school services for those services. I'm assuming that most of that communication has been successful. I won't go through it in a huge amount of detail, but from paragraph 15 onwards, there's some quite detailed information in there about the new services or enhanced services that we've been able to put on using the Bus Service Improvement Plan funding. So if you recall, we've got £23 million worth of funding to support the network to the end of March 2025. We've utilised the majority of that, not just in putting on new services, but also using it cleverly, shall we say, to incorporate some of the services that would otherwise have been at risk. What I would say is we not only tendered those services on cost, but there was a quality element in there as well. So we're working with the new operators that are coming in to provide those services to ensure that they are committed to what they said within their tender response to us. But it's very much been about mobilisation to date, and we'll be working with those operators to ensure that the quality follows very soon after. Partnership services, paragraph 45, so we've been again predominantly working with National Express and Diamond, where they operate on competing services to make sure that they are operated as efficiently as possible across the two operators. So new elements of those have been launched from the 1st of January as well. Some of them have been amendments to the existing partnership routes, but with new ones. Also coming forward, most notably on Service 16 between Birmingham and West Bromwich, and also on the 45 between Walsall and West Bromwich as well. So they have launched as well and provided that level of efficiency, which meant vehicles have been released from both operators, either to include in the wider commercial networks or to be put onto the additional subsidised services that we have tendered for. There are a batch of services that need further review. So we have temporarily supported the services that we've identified in paragraphs 51 through to 56 that need some further work and some further analysis. So we are committed to do that ahead of a tender round in April, which will not just consider those services, but another batch of tenders that we've got to competitively tender from that date as well. We have done, as you'll be aware, we've done some quite considerable stakeholder engagement with senior stakeholders right across the West Midlands. There was an initial letter that went out from Anne that's been followed up by a further communication providing details of the outcome of the review. And also with passengers as well. There's a slight update to the paragraph 61 when we've talked about the number of information that's gone out there, but we've actually replaced now in the region, or will be replaced in the region, of 11,500 timetables across the network. Ideally, that would have been done ahead of the 1st of January or very soon after. Unfortunately, because of the speed of the change, the nature of the changes and the number of changes that are having to take place, that will be later in February when we will have completed that exercise. And I appreciate that's not ideal, but unfortunately due to the scale is a bit of a struggle to get that done and dusted in the time that we would like. We have, however, distributed 5,000 posters that have gone up at every bus shelter across the network. We've also been in contact with local libraries and community hubs to put posters up informing passengers of where they can get hold of that information and make it available. And we do know that passengers are doing that because we're seeing the hits on the website as people are coming and looking at new timetables and the information that we have put out there. I would hasten to add that all of the digital information is now up to date, so all of the timetables can be accessed online, and the real-time information system is also up to date. Pete briefly touched on future operator support financially, so I won't dwell on that, but just to add that we have identified that there is likely to be the need for further operator changes as we go through the year, depending on the outcome of that funding discussion. We're working closely with National Express and all of the bus operators to understand the potential size of those potential changes. Obviously, it's going to be difficult now for TfWM to react to some of that. Our budget now is fully committed for 2023-2024. So any commercial deregistrations are going to be difficult for us to cover because we've now completed that exercise. But we will keep the stakeholders informed as we go forward. We had hoped that the network review would have been the answer to all of the issues around network performance. But I think as we've come up to Christmas, it's been very clear that that hasn't necessarily been the case, partly because I don't think National Express in particular where they wanted to be in terms of driver recruitment, and also they haven't been able to get the number of services down to be delivered by the number of drivers that they've got. So that still is a problem for us, albeit it is better than it has been at the back end of 2022. Councillor Grinsell, you mentioned Stagecoach. There has been some mobilisation issues with all bus operators, not just with Stagecoach. What I would say is Stagecoach are perhaps being more clear to us on what their issues are, and we've been working very closely with them to ensure that passengers are informed as to which services are and aren't operating, and we're meeting with them on a daily basis to understand exactly what they are doing to ensure that the mobilisation continues positively as we go forward. I'm pleased to indicate that it's very much an improving picture, and from tomorrow we should be in a far better place than we have been in the last week or so. And just
Chair, with respect, can I just ask John to contact me directly over my issues? Thank you.
I will, Councillor Grinsell, and I will also investigate the other email that you sent through and to find out where your response is to that. Chair,
thank you.
While I've got the floor as well, can I just update the committee to say that in September we brought a report to TDC with an update on the bus service improvement plan. In that report, we said that we would be taking the bus registration powers from the Office of the Traffic Commissioner from the 1st of January. That hasn't happened. We have continued to develop the mechanism, but because we're not yet in a position to deliver some of the detailed requirements within the bus service improvement plan in terms of maximum frequencies that we need to do because of the bonfire bus tickets that Matt talked about, that is now delayed and looking more likely to be delivered towards the end of February. But we'll keep TDC informed as we go forward with that element as well.
Any questions?
Hang on, I think we've got Councillor Alden, then Councillor Lyons, and then Councillor Stanley.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'll try and keep it very quick, Chairman, in taking on board your comments at the beginning. So it was obviously very disappointing to see the 89 being removed and the 25 having a service reduction, but very welcome the retention of the 77, 28, a number of the school service and an expansion of the 96. And I particularly want to thank Councillor Locke and officers for their support in pushing those changes with the bus company. So that's very welcome, and hopefully will at least provide local residents with a bit of extra support. The only other comments just to make, I would ask that we keep the pressure on the bus companies around really not bringing school changes through mid-year. I think that's an incredibly bad form And I do hope we keep reminding those companies that if they are going to make changes, they really should be at the end of the school year, not just. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Ever so quickly, I just want to touch upon what Councillor Grinsell mentioned and to say that I agree with him regarding the members' inquiries inbox. I also am awaiting quite a number of responses. I've personally raised some issues as far back as November, and 6 weeks later, I'm still waiting on a response to various questions I have asked. So I would also question whether that inbox is fit for purpose or whether, as a resource for members, it's working as it's intended to. John, you've pretty much answered the question I had within your report. Thank you, about when the changes to the signage and timetables were going to take place at the physical bus stops and shelters. So could I just have it noted on my disappointment in fact that they weren't done in time before the changes took place, because there were quite a number of elderly people in Solihull who perhaps wouldn't have seen the changes online before they came into effect after the 1st of January, waiting at bus stops for buses which weren't coming and no longer existed.
Stanley.
Councillor Stanley.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. Yeah, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I'd like to formally thank Mr. Hayes and Mr. Eidman for retaining the services in Gornal and Sedgley with the 17 and 27. The operator has changed from National Express to Diamond. The service is more reliable, but we have got a slight problem, which I'll bring up later in another agenda, Madam Chairman, if I may, to remarks that I made at our meeting, and it comes in later on in the meeting. But we're very, very grateful that we've got the 17 and 27 services retained, and it is a real pleasure now that the fear has gone, that we've got at least some bus services coming into Gornal. Mr. Hayes knows my concerns, Mr. Eidman knows my concerns, and at least if we can retain what we've got, I'll be very, very grateful indeed. And just to thank both of them for the hard work and for listening and actually putting those services where they should be. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you. I've got Councillors Webb hiding in that order.
Thanks, Chair. John, I wonder if you could, I've had various constituents phone me up regarding the 46 service, and the elected members there have raised concerns as well. Could you look into the matter and perhaps get it reconsidered, please, and let me know?
Yes, Councillor, we've had quite a bit of communication regarding service 46, so I'll provide you with a written note of what's happened with that service and the alternatives that are available.
Thank you.
I just wanted to say thank you for retaining the school service. Head teachers, pupils, parents and residents of my ward felt listened to. They felt listened to, understood, and I am ever so pleased that National Express were able to retain services for our children. Thank you very much indeed for all those that made it happen.
Chair, let me say that I'm totally disappointed with our bus services in West Midlands. It's atrocious. It's not acceptable. It's essential service. You know, every one of us is crucial. Buses are to our economy and to our community and to our environment. But sir, I will not talk about about Coventry, the specific services numbers. But sir, first of all, thank you for coming to our city. And I don't have complaints as far as the casework is concerned. I got a lot of casework, which I sent to you and I sent to National Express, and I get the replies. That's another problem. So, but look at page 38, the principle I'm going to talk with you, that how can we accept something like this? On page 38, number 50, just I want you to, that paragraph says it all. That notification of these changes regarding the services to hospital, the patients, the visitors and their families Not acceptable. They never told you, they never said anything to you. At the last minute, they pulled it on and they said 20C, 28, number 3, all going to hospital, essential services. You never had the opportunity to discuss with them, or they're giving you, I mean, how can we accept that? We can never accept that, you know, from a major operator in our area. And when we have since 2015 bus, what you call it, Bus Alliance and Bus Vision, they don't kind of adapt to that, do they? You know, and the second point, you know, what you said about future sport, you can see in previous years, you know, we go right to the edge of the cliff and then we get a bit of money and then, you know, we plan, which is not fair on our officers. And the anger should be where it should be. And once again, the political leadership, including us, we are letting down very people who elected us. Now, look at page 40 and what Pete said. Once again, National Express is making very clear that if we don't get the funding, we will cut services. So we need funding for short term and we need a funding for long term on sustainable basis. And I appeal to officers that they need to advise us properly that what can we do? And once again, as you know, I missed the opportunity last time. I appeal and I like to propose, and please, if I can have a second, that Andy Street, our mayor, with the respect, please, he needs to do more and stand up to government and say, we need the buses to be funded properly.
Seconded.
Well, I just need some wording if it's going to be moved.
Well, it's my wording will be very simple. And that will be that I'd like to propose that our elected mayor does his utmost to persuade the government to fund services in West Midlands.
Beyond March.
Yes, behind.
No, we're okay till March. That's where the cliff edge is, isn't it?
Yes, yes.
Dan, are you okay with that?
Yeah.
Could you read it back, please?
Yeah, so resolution TDC, if agreed, would be that the mayor be requested to do his, the resolution agreed will be that the mayor is requested to do his utmost to persuade the government to fund the bus services in the West Midlands beyond March.
Yes, okay.
Okay, you wish to speak on that?
No, I wish to amend it. As it's been moved, then I believe we have an amendment. Not just the mayor, but of course also the lead member for transport on the West Midlands Combined Authority. So you make it a joint thing between the mayor and the relevant cabinet member on the West Midlands Combined Authority board.
I'll second that.
Is that acceptable to the movers?
If it helps.
And a minute breaks out.
I want to move another amendment which says funding after March, adequate funding after March. Be seconded. Yep.
There you go. I think we've come to a consensus.
Yes.
On the amendment. The amendment.
Yeah. Okay, so that's accepted. And what do you think we've got now?
That's something in the future.
So it I think I'm just using the correct term. So it'll be the mayor and the board for transport be requested to do their utmost to persuade the government to adequately fund bus services in the West Midlands beyond March.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was in favour.
Long term.
Yeah, we need long-term funding. We need a move away from this stop-start short-termism to a long-term strategy for funding for the transport system, for the integrated transport system of the West Midlands. I mean, we're absolutely cracking in what we do. I sit here and I'm gobsmacked with what the officers achieve in very difficult circumstances. And you know, this is a way of us showing our support for you, really, because you need the tools to do the job. You do the job superbly. You need Political short-termism. You need, long-term funding.
Well, I mean, the resolution as proposed would go to the Combined Authority, wouldn't it?
That's right, Chair. So the minutes of this meeting go on to the WMCA board, and it will be a recommendation of this board to the main board.
Rather than add further to the wording, would it be okay? Because sometimes they allow me to speak.
I did last time.
I could explain that we are talking about adequate long-term funding, which I'm sure everyone.
Yeah, that's fine, yeah.
We're happy.
Anyway, put long-term in there. Doesn't matter if I don't get invited to speak. Right, in favour, yeah?
Right.
Yeah. Thanks. Yes, you can.
I'm glad we're agreed on that. Regarding, notification of the changes and things like that, while I find some of it has gone reasonably well, there are parts that haven't. I'm not going to go individual services because, people are. This comes on another item in it as well. In the other part, but there are people who say, well, where's this bus gone and where's that bus gone, and it's like getting round like Chinese whispers what to get. And while you mentioned communities, I think churches, mosques and temples and things like that also need to have it up as well, because I think some people people of different faiths, and maybe schools as well, some grandparents.
Please, you want to come back on that one?
Please, if I may, Chair, thank you. And thank you, Councillor. Look, I absolutely agree with all of your points. And I just think it's really important that we level a bit of clarity to the committee, which is with regards to the kind of timescales that we would normally undertake a review of this nature would be around 9 to 12 months. And it's only taking 9 to 12 weeks. I don't say that defensively. I just want to be clear to everybody. Have we done as much as we can in the time and process that we were given? I would like to think the answer to that is yes. Have we done as much as we would like in a process that we would normally undertake? The answer to that is clearly no. What I would hope with the resolution that the committee has just talked about and wider engagement is that we get ourselves into a position whereby we are given the ability to have a longer term approach to reviews of the network. The points that we're making at stop information. Sadly, we have to provide information to this committee that some of the information to go out to bus stops hasn't yet been printed, because the way that the notice works, we have to receive registrations from operators, and that information has to go into a system. And because of the way that these changes have had to happen, then some of those registrations haven't come through. I think the other thing I'd just like to share with members is in response to what was said about members' inquiries in other areas. I myself, I know that I have made some personal failings in email responses during the course of the last 6 to 8 weeks, just because of the volume. And what we've also found with this particular review is a very scattergun approach to complaints from some individuals. So whereby I'm receiving the same complaint that has gone to the mayor, to TDC members, to the leader at Birmingham, to various other stakeholders. So therefore we have the same one coming through multiple times. That's not an excuse for not dealing with something. It's just set out for members. It has been quite unprecedented and untoward, the level that we've had to deal with. So whilst we continue to deal with that, I just appreciate anybody really coming back to John or myself with any of those outstandings. We are dealing with our customer services team, working with them to ensure that we're getting on top of that volume. And there was an absolute backlog left just prior to Christmas. So to make sure that we can continue to work those through and work on your behalf to provide you with the responses. And if there's anything we're not doing, please bring it to our attention and we will work to get that through. So it is unprecedented. We hope not to be in this position again, but that is based on the other points that have been discussed through this committee. Thank you.
Right, anything further, anyone? So I just do want to say, I know it's been hugely challenging and I don't want to sound like a creep, but I think you've done a great job. I really do. Extremely, extremely difficult. I I hope it just gets a bit easier, a lot easier. Right, okay, so again, we're noting the contents of that report and various items that you will come back to the elected members, correct? Yeah. Item 13. Got an item 13.
So the line one renewals for Metro is being moved to a later date, so it's not going to the CA board.
Right, okay. So we move on to item 14. Yes?
Yes.
Okay, that's the notice of motion. I'm going, I've made some revisions and amplifications to what was actually on the agenda paper. And that was basically because it went in very last minute before the Christmas break. Peter's kindly provided me with some extra information around the whole area, and I wonder, Pete, whether you might just say what you'd like to say in respect of it.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the notice of motion. Just in terms of the noted the content of this, this is about the £2 bus fare cap, which has been a scheme promoted by the government nationally across England to operators, and the government themselves have engaged with bus operators directly to negotiate and agree which operators are going to accept the £2 fares cap. And just for clarity, this is due to run from beginning of the year, January the 1st through to March 31st. So a 3-month cap for £2 fares. In the West Midlands, we were notified in December that government were undertaking discussions with all of our respective operators, and it became clear that there were some that were not either intending or able to participate. The notice of motion refers to West Midlands operators. The thing that I can advise and update is that we have been able to work with some of those operators to get them into the scheme. And that's because operators who are not BSOG registered, bus service operator grant registered with government, weren't negotiating with the government directly. So we've been able to intervene and negotiate on their behalf. So we have been able to bring some operators into that place, so they are accepting the £2 fare cap. And we will be responsible and accountable for the reimbursement to them of the difference. That has to be said, that I think there is now the main outstanding position is that our second largest operator, that is Rotala Diamond Bus, they were negotiating directly with government, not via ourselves. They have not been able to reach an agreement with the Department for Transport to accept the £2 fares cap. So that is the major gap within the West Midlands. What is, I suppose, of concern more to us is that we have some bus services and corridors where we operate what are known as partnership routes, but predominantly in the Black Country, actually. And those partnership routes are whereby people can turn up and catch any bus, and there are some ticket acceptance arrangements. But as we sit here, there are some routes where customers may board one particular bus and pay £2.40 and another bus and pay £2. So that's kind of the major inconsistency and element around this that we are currently aware of. I think the other point that was raised in the notice of motion was with regards to the short-term nature of the funding arrangement. That is a concern that Transport for West Midlands themselves had already raised with the Department for Transport. What is the exit strategy on the 1st of April? But I do have to say that with our bus fares within the West Midlands region already being quite low and amongst some of the lowest in the country, then actually the differential between £2 and £2.40 in most instances isn't as significant as it is in some of the shire territories, for example, where bus fares are £3, £4 and £5 for single tickets. So there are some major implications there. But the point is noted, and we will contact the Department for Transport and seek answers to the notice of motion as set out by TDC.
I know that the two political groups have had sight of the revised wording.
Yeah.
But for those who haven't seen it, then I'd just like to read it back.
To help, I've shared my copy with Councillor Chowdhury.
Thank you, but I'm thinking of those sitting at the back. Transport Delivery Committee is concerned that some bus operators serving the West Midlands are presently unwilling to take part in the government's £2 maximum single fare initiative. This not only penalises affected bus passengers in particular areas of the West Midlands, but also leads to would-be bus users confusion as to which bus operators are and are not in the scheme. We asked Transport for West Midlands to contact the operators in question. You now know it's just one. A, to urge them to reconsider their view to their joining the scheme at the earliest. Reconsider view to their joining the scheme at the earliest, and B, to ask them to set out their reasons for not taking part as soon as possible. Of course, if they take part, that doesn't really apply. This information is to be communicated to all TDC members and to the 6th of February 2023 TDC meeting. Furthermore, we notice this is a short-term scheme funded by the DFT until the end of March only, when we believe that there would be major benefit in an adequately funded, affordable, longer-term DFT single bus fare scheme. We therefore recommend to WMCA that they ask the Department for Transport to extend the scheme on a long-term basis. So that's what it says. That's what most of all members have seen. Yes, Pete.
Could I add one supplementary point, Chair, and that is just to advise, though, that subject to the first point, which is contacting and communicating with operators to an operator in this instance now to seek their clarification and reconsideration, is that if that operator does reconsider, what we don't have clarity around at this point in time is whether the DFT would either be permitted or be willing to permit them into a scheme that is now closed. So I just raise that point because then that's a further point that we need to flag to the department and with that operator concern.
Thanks. I mean, my attitude is that we can only do our best on this, you know, and if it's not within our gift, it's not going to happen, even if there's a willingness. Yeah. Okay. Members, any debate?
No, all that I'm going to say, Mr. Chairman, I think it's at this point we should move it, and I'm quite happy to propose if you have a seconder.
Yeah, I'll second that.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Right. I think that's unanimously agreed. Yeah. Thank you very much. Right. Councillor Stanley, I can't believe you were so brief.
You'll wait till the next one.
You're tempted, mate.
Right, so on we go now to item 15. Member engagement groups. For noting, I mean, yes, Councillor Stanley.
I've introduced items 15 now.
I will now introduce it. Well, you can see what's there, so I will just invite members to have an input on whichever meg they would like to have an input on. Councillor Stanley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If I could draw the committee's attention and yours and council officers to page 67, where the comment I made at the meeting with regards to the real-time information that's in our bus stops, bus shelters and bus stations, which really I ask should be turned off. It's so confusing now, it's past a joke. Probably I should have raised part of this with Mr. Lewis, who was here earlier, Swift, who made brief mention to it. But the new service we've introduced is not fair on the operators like Diamond, where it's actually showing nothing at all during the day or the evening service operating. People and passengers are confused as to whether the buses are running or not. The timetables have not been given out of all. It's a complete shambles from top to bottom. We were promised at that meeting by the lady that attended that by the end of last year, this would be put right. The real time would be the real time. I was rather concerned that we've now got the situation where it's showing services that are come into time when it should be says due, they jump off the screen altogether. It is a really shambolic mess. There's two systems, I believe, being used and both are inadequate. Is it fair on an operator like Diamond, who's recently took over this service I previously mentioned to Mr. Hayes for, when their service is not actually showing on the Dudley bus station, for example, its P stand is a stand, and there's nothing there to say the bus operator is still going. I mean, people are asking me, you know what I mean, are the buses running at night? Because there's nothing other than if 5:45 is the last one. From time to time, you get the show up there. So really speaking, we really ought to get our act together, and whoever's responsible for this real time really needs sorting out once and for all. It's a complete shambles.
I think Councillor Stanley's not too happy. Pete.
Mr. Chairman, before I finish, can I support that my colleague from Wolverhampton right on the fact that this comment she made just below what I've referred to. Myself and Councillor Millward came to Wolverhampton Station today. We realised the problems with the drainage system there, but it has been going on for 4 years. So really speaking, they do need to get their act sorted out. Thank you.
Chair, can I respond on the RTI? But can I suggest, Councillor Stanley, either at the next Putting Passengers First member engagement group, we give the members a detailed briefing on where we are with RTI.
I think we need that.
We can do that because there is quite a lot of moving parts to that system, as I know you understand and appreciate. But in the meantime, I will investigate as a matter of urgency why the system isn't showing the Diamond departures. That is news to me. I wasn't aware of that. It should show all bus operators in there. It could be, and I don't want to cast dispersions, but it could be that we haven't had some of the digital information from the operator to go into our systems, or that we haven't put it on there as yet. But we'll do what we can to resolve it.
Mr. Chairman, with your permission, I'd like to respond to that. Yes, anything we can do to put this matter right, I'd be most appreciative of. One of the difficulties is we have to bear in mind that the operators have recently took these services over, and of course they still training the drivers on some of them because it came as very short notice, and of course some of the routes are quite long, and it is taking them time to get the drivers up to speed with the new routes, and we have to take that into account. But what I'm saying is we should be helping them along in respect of they're offering the service, it's paid for partly by ourselves as part tendered service. We need to give them all the support. What I would like to do, Mr. Chairman, at some time, I'd like to meet someone from Diamond at the Tibbydale garage and go into one or two details where I may be able to use a little bit of information and help them along the way on local knowledge. So that's another comment, Mr. Chairman, I'll make, and I'll finish at that.
Thank you. The members? Okay. So, watching the recent activities of the committee's Megs. Agreed?
Aye.
Item 16. Right. Who's using this? Yeah.
So I'll give you a brief update. Obviously, you've got in the pack the board report that went in December. We have 3 projects that urgently required some additional budget in order for completion. So that's 2 of the metro extensions and also University Station, which we talked about earlier. There is also due to other factors, inflationary factors, which was referred to earlier in the meeting. We've been doing some assessments on all of the capital projects that are in flight to flag any sort of early warnings around any additional budget pressures that might be coming as part of those projects as well, in order to make sure that they are completed, and making sure that also we're able to sort of keep within our financial regulations around that as well. In terms of the approvals that was given. There is a transfer of monies from TCF to those 3 projects, which will enable us to complete those projects and keep within the financial regulations. And then also that would require us to move the TCF projects into the CRSTS programme. And we're in discussions, we've put in a formal change request with DfT to allow us to do that as well. But I think it's fair to say that with all of the inflationary things that we're seeing, the supply chains, labour costs, energy, there's been quite a lot of pressures that are coming on the capital programme. Around the metro extension, the borrowing model that we have around the fare box, alongside operational costs increases and also the cost of the construction, we are seeing obviously increased costs on those as well, which we do need to manage. So that was the purpose of the report that went in December, sorry. And obviously we will also be reporting in due course on the CRSTS annual review, which will happen as part of that as well. So there'll be some further information that will come to the TDC in due course.
So essentially it's for information.
Yeah, it's for information, and there is an item in the private section which we might want to get into in a bit of detail if necessary.
Okay. Is there any comment on 16? No. Then I will move 17, which is to go into private session for the item 18.